if you ask your average Christian, who is Israel and who is the church, typically you'll find that they believe that the church and Israel are two separate entities. Question: are Israel and the church the same thing? Does God still have a plan for Israel? Shalom, shalom. You're listening to Short Questions, Short Answers, a Shomer Mitzvot mini-series. Let's look at a short answer, right? To this question, are Israel and the church the same thing? Does God still have a plan for Israel? Two questions. Here's my answers. Short answer. All right. I'll answer the two questions head on and then attempt to substantiate my answers from the text, from the Bible, of course. All right. First question says, are Israel and the church the same thing? Answer: well, yes and no. All right. Yes and no. Israel, in my opinion, exists on two levels. The two levels are National Israel and Remnant Israel. And I'll explain all that a little later. But for now, in my short answer, I think that's how I approach the question. That's how I understand the text. The church actually exists, I go on to say, within Remnant Israel. And Remnant Israel itself exists within National Israel. Got a bit of a nesting going on. Right, one is within the other, which is within another. I'll flesh this out with verses below, so don't worry if you're a bit confused right now. Question: does God still have a plan for Israel? Absolutely, right? God still does have a plan for Israel. That's why we read the liturgy that we did in Romans chapter 11, which we're going to look at again here in a moment. Messiah is the head of Remnant Israel, and even though National Israel doesn't have faith in Yeshua yet, nevertheless, God the Father is still going to bring National Israel to her knees in repentance someday. Longer answers. Paul sets up the olive tree example in Romans 11 through 24. All right, we read part of that passage in our liturgy tonight. Specifically in Romans 11:16, he teaches that if the root is holy, then the branches are holy. Now, who is the root in this passage? In my answer, I say that I take the olive tree to be the family of Israel and the root to be the patriarchs. The holy aspect, where Paul says if the root is holy, then the branches are holy. So the holy aspect that Paul is teaching is Paul trying to explain the set-apartness of the patriarchs, right? They've been set apart by God from the rest of the world unto God. They've specifically been, as we know, singled out to be covenant recipients of the covenant promises that God spelled out to the man Abraham and his offspring. So in my opinion, if in fact Abraham is the nourishing root in Paul's example, right, he's the exemplar, he's the prime example that we can learn from. That's what that word exemplar means. If he is the prime example of faith for all of his branches, meaning all of his offspring, both Jew and Gentile, but especially for the remnant who live among the other unsaved natural branches, and for the grafted in branches, these of course would be the Gentiles. I think it's helpful when we're describing this olive tree theology and how Israel and the church identify with one another. It's helpful to describe what's known as a Venn diagram. Venn, V like victory, E-N-N, Venn diagram. In case you don't know what that is, just picture the MasterCard logo, right? We got two circles that start to be overlapped one another as they intersect in the middle. So you take two circles, draw two circles, and push them towards one another, and don't completely put them on top of one another. Just have them overlap in that middle section, that little slice there. Just like in the MasterCard logo, we got a red circle on the left and a kind of a mustard-colored circle on the right, and when you overlap them, that little orange slice in the middle, that becomes the overlapping section. That's a Venn diagram. Using that analogy, we could put National Israel on the left side of that Venn diagram, that left circle, and on the right circle we could fill in the term Gentile nations. Gentile nations. So two nations are being described in my little Venn diagram. Left circle, Israel. Right circle, Gentile nations. And as we draw these two circles close to one another, that little section, that orange section in the middle where they overlap, that little section known as Remnant Israel, right, that slice in the middle, is a composite of people from National Israel who have placed their faith in Messiah. So notice they move from the outermost left edge into that center section. And it's also composed of people from the surrounding nations who have also placed their faith in Messiah and moved from the outermost right circle in towards that center section, the overlapping section. So they move from the mustard colored section into the orange section right there in the middle. So you guys picturing that in your mind there? For those of you who are following along with me on YouTube, you're probably at this point in time looking at a graphic that I've supplied in my post-production process that I'm putting up on the screen that describes this. So that's what I'm picturing here. So that is my understanding of how we can identify Israel, the nations, and Remnant Israel. So in that answer, in that little description, who is the church? Well, it's easy. The church is actually Remnant Israel. That's who the church is. The church is Remnant Israel. The church is that slice right in the middle, that orange slice, that is a composite of those from National Israel who place their faith in Jesus and those from the nations who place their faith in Jesus. That's the church. The church is Remnant Israel. And this is not replacement theology, because Remnant Israel doesn't replace National Israel. Nor is this supersessionism or dispensationalism, because remnant theology is still identified within National Israel. In other words, they're still a part of National Israel. They're just a smaller segmented part of the circle known as Israel. When we answer this question, are Gentiles grafted into Israel? I hear some believers say, yes, we are grafted into Israel. Yes, Gentiles are grafted into Israel. Gentile believers are grafted into Israel. I hear other Messianics teach no, or other Christians teach no, Gentile Christians are not grafted into Israel. Confusion is supplied by the fact that the word Israel needs to be understood on two different levels. If you use the term Israel to describe the national part, the unbelieving part, then it is true that Gentile Christians are not grafted into Israel, because Gentile Christians are not joining national unbelieving Israel when they place their faith in Jesus. However, if when you say Gentile Christians are grafted into Israel, if in your mind you picture the word Israel as describing remnant Israel exclusively, then yes, it is true that Gentile Christians are grafted into Israel. And the second part of the question, does God still have a plan for Israel? Well, obviously, if your definition of Israel includes remnant Israel, then God, yes, definitely has a plan for remnant Israel. He's going to continue to strengthen her and to grow her and to swell her numbers and eventually take her to be to himself when he returns at his second coming. But if your definition of this term Israel refers to national unbelieving Israel, well, then the answer is still yes, absolutely. God has a plan for national unbelieving Israel as well. Basically, on a natural level, on a national level, Jeremiah 31:31-34 has not happened yet. It's still a future occurrence. So God, if he's still to be true, if his word can be trusted, then absolutely he is going to do this. He's going to actually bring Israel to her knees in repentance, nationally speaking, and then they can profess faith in their Lord. Now, will it be every single Israelite? I don't think so, but that's a different discussion for a different day. The point I'm trying to make is that in this passage, this is a national promise, a promise to national Israel. That's going to do it for us tonight. I encourage you to log on to my YouTube channel and check out the other videos I've made available to you. And while you're there, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Just go ahead and click the subscribe button, or on any one of the videos. If you click on the hover over the little my avatar over in the lower right corner, it will also allow you to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And if you watch one of the videos and you like it, why don't you go ahead and give it a thumbs up as well. For those of you who are following this commentary on iTunes, yes, I encourage you to also subscribe to my iTunes podcasts, where I park quite a few commentaries, biblical teachings, commentaries, more topics that you can engage in, to include weekly Torah portions. My Galatians commentary is parked there. I have podcasts on the festivals, major and minor, as well as, again, each book of the Torah has a commentary on each Torah portion as well. Okay?